Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Parr, and on this episode of Math Up to Par, we are going to be talking about how to represent probability as a fraction. If you have not yet watched my video on representing probability with words, please go back and watch that before watching this video because it will help make a lot more sense. Okay? So probability is the chance of an event occurring. Okay, and in my video on with using it words, we were able to represent something as certain that it would happen, impossible that it would happen, using possible words like likely, unlikely, equally likely, and so we were able to represent it with words, but we're also able to represent it with numbers. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So, excuse me, probability is quantified as a number between 0 and 1, okay? Not a very big range, but in between 0 and 1 are what we call parts of a number. So we have fractions or we have decimals to represent those amounts, okay? An event is going to be impossible if it has a probability of 0. That means there's no chance, okay? If there's one whole chance that it could happen, meaning nothing else stands in its way, it has a probability of 1, okay? So let's try it with this scenario right here. So our scenario is a box contains 5 blue blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 red blocks, 1, 2, and 3 green blocks, 1, 2, 3. Altogether, 5 plus 2 plus 3 adds up to 10. That's important. We need to know the total amount of blocks or total amount of items that we are dealing with here. For the probability of choosing a blue block, okay, I am going to represent it as a fraction. So it would be 5 out of 10. And 5 out of 10 can also be written like this, because that fraction line is another way to write out of something. So 5 out of 10. If you know about fractions, you know that 5 out of 10 or 5/10 is equivalent to 1/2, okay? And we're not going to be talking about equivalent fractions and all of that too much today. We'll touch on it just a little bit, and you can watch my other videos on fractions to learn more about that. But we're just going to be talking about not simplified fractions today to represent these probability amounts, the chance that something would happen. So let's go back to our problems. And number 2 says, what is the probability of choosing a red block? Well, there are 2 red blocks and there are 10 total blocks. So it would be 2 out of 10, which I could also write as a fraction 2/10, 2 out of 10. The probability of choosing a green block, okay, there are 3 green blocks, so it would be 3 out of 10, which I could also write as a fraction 3/10. And then what is the probability of choosing a pink block? Well, there are no pink blocks, so it would be 0 out of 10, which would look like this, or that's just equal to 0. Okay, if you have 0 in the numerator, it's just equal to 0. And when we talk about fractions, we'll talk more about that, okay? So when I look at these, okay, I can use words to represent these as well, because this 0 right here, that means it's impossible, right? To choose a pink block, I can represent it with numbers. I can say there's a 0 out of 10 chance that it gets picked, or I could say it's impossible. Okay, both of those represent the same thing. For my red or my green, there aren't very many red or green. So if I were to pick a red versus any other color in this box, it would be unlikely. It's a 2 out of 10 chance, which is unlikely. Same goes for my green blocks, 3 out of 10. So I could use the words unlikely to describe these, or I could use number values, fraction values to represent it as well. When I'm talking about blue blocks, there are 5 that are blue and there are 5 that are not blue. So depending on my phrasing, I could say, okay, if it's 5 out of 10, there's an equally likely chance of choosing a blue than there is any other color. If I was just comparing to red, there would be 5 red and 5 blue and 2 red. So I would say there's more likely chance to pick blue than red. But because I'm comparing it out of the total amount, there's an equally likely chance of picking blue versus any other color. All right. So in my other video with talking about probability using words, I wanted you to know we could also use these same items to represent probability with fractions, okay? So there's a 0 out of 6 chance that I land on the number 9 on this 6-sided dice, okay? There is a 1 out of 6 chance I land on a 3. That's what I happen to land on, but there's 6 total sides, and there was 1 out of 3 chances. So a dice can be used and is used in a lot of probability problems, but I can use numbers to represent it. This is a spinner, and there are 4 pieces, and these pieces are equal. So the size of your pieces and the amount of your pieces in a spinner are going to make a difference, because if the pieces are different sizes, then that's going to impact your chances. But because these are all the same size, it's an equally likely chance I land on a purple than on a green. But there's a less likely chance that I land on purple out of green, red, or orange, because it could land on any of these as opposed to this one. So you can use, there's a 1 out of 4 chance of landing on red. There's a 1 out of 4 chance of landing on green. Same thing for purple and orange. But you could also say there is a 2 out of 4 chance of landing on purple or green, because you're including both of them together. And then we also have a deck of cards, okay? There are 52 cards in a deck if you don't count the jokers. And so if I were going to say, what are the chances of pulling a 10 of hearts out of a deck of cards? Well, it's a 1 out of 52 chance, okay? Which is very unlikely, but it's still possible, okay? If I said, what are the chances of pulling a king in any suit out of the deck of cards? Well, there's 4. So I'd say 4 out of 52, which is still unlikely, but it's more of a chance than 1 out of 52. Okay, I said, what are the chances of pulling out a card with a number on it in any suit? Well, these are all number cards. So I'd have 9, 18, 27, and then 36. So 36 out of 52 chance of picking a card with a number on it. That would be likely, okay? But I could also represent it as 36 out of 52. Okay, so all of these things can be used for a probability to represent the chance that something would happen, and you can represent it with numbers or with words. All right, guys, be sure to check out my other probability videos. You should have already watched the words one if you have not yet, and then be sure to check out representing probability on a number line and creating your own probability problem. Thanks for listening and happy practicing.